The baby's cry pierced through the steady hum of the airplane. It was the kind of cry that drew restless sighs, turned heads, and made passengers subtly shift in their seats. Somewhere near the middle aisle, a young woman closed her eyes, clutching the small paperback she'd been trying to read. She wasn't annoyed, just quietly empathetic. She knew what exhaustion sounded like, and that child's cry was not of mischief, but of need. The flight was halfway from New York to Los Angeles, and the air had grown heavy with recycled air and impatience. A few rows ahead, a man cradled his crying toddler awkwardly, whispering soothing words that seemed to dissolve before reaching the little boy's ears. His expensive suit, his wristwatch, even the discreet sigh that escaped his lips, everything about him said he was used to control. But in that moment, he was powerless. The woman, Elena Brooks, hesitated for a moment. She wasn't someone who interfered. She was quiet by nature, the kind of person who could be invisible in a crowd. But as she watched the man's trembling hand pat the baby's back, something tugged at her heart. The baby's sobs cracked with desperation, and his small fists clutched at the air. Without thinking, Elena stood up. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked down the aisle. A few passengers looked up, curious, as she stopped beside the man. "Excuse me," she said softly. "May I try?" The man looked up, startled. His eyes were tired, bloodshot, and framed by the kind of sadness that ran deep. For a second, he didn't speak. Then he gave a small, helpless nod. Elena smiled gently and reached for the baby. The child hesitated but didn't resist. She held him close, his tiny head pressing against her shoulder. Then she began to hum. It wasn't a song anyone recognized, not a famous lullaby, but a tune woven with warmth, the kind that mothers pass down to daughters without words. Her voice was soft, trembling at first, then steady as it wrapped the air around them like a blanket. Within moments, the baby's cries faded to hiccups. His little fingers clutched her blouse, and his breathing slowed. The passengers, who had been fidgeting and whispering, fell silent. The man watched, his expression shifting from shock to something unreadable. His lips parted slightly as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. Elena kept singing until the child was asleep, his face resting peacefully against her neck. When she finally sat beside the man, still holding the sleeping child, the plane seemed to exhale with relief. "Thank you," he said quietly. His voice was deep, but there was a fragility beneath it, like a cracked instrument trying to fine-tune again. "It's all right," she replied, smiling softly. He just needed to feel calm. Babies can sense when someone's heart is tired. The man looked at her then, truly looked. Her face wasn't extraordinary, but there was something luminous in her eyes, a sincerity he hadn't seen in years. "I'm Daniel," he said finally. "And this is Noah." Elena brushed the baby's hair gently. "Hi, Noah, you're quite the singer yourself." Daniel chuckled faintly, the sound foreign to him. It's been a while since anyone could calm him like that. Elena hesitated before asking, "His mother?" Daniel's expression changed, just slightly, but enough for her to wish she hadn't asked. His eyes turned distant, heavy with a story. "She passed away last year. Car accident." Noah was barely one. Elena's breath caught. "I'm so sorry." He nodded, staring at the sleeping boy. "He hasn't slept through a night since. I try, but I'm not her." She wanted to say something comforting, but words felt small beside grief that vast. Instead, she simply whispered, "No one can replace her. But you're doing your best. That matters." They sat quietly for a while, the hum of the engines filling the silence. Elena didn't notice the tears gathering at the corners of Daniel's eyes. He blinked them away quickly, unused to being seen. When the plane landed, Daniel offered to carry her bag, but she refused with a smile. "You've got your hands full." He hesitated as she turned to leave. "Elena," he called softly. "Thank you, for today." She smiled. Sometimes a song is all it takes. And then she was gone. For the next few days, Daniel couldn't shake her voice from his mind. It wasn't just the lullaby, it was the calm, the gentleness that had momentarily mended the cracks in his heart. He was a billionaire, owner of one of the biggest tech firms in California, a man who could buy anything except peace. Yet one stranger's voice had given him that for a few stolen minutes. He told himself it was nothing, just gratitude. But when he found himself standing at a bookstore one afternoon, the same one Elena had mentioned in passing, he realized he was lying to himself. He saw her before she saw him, tucked in a corner, reading to a group of children. Her laughter danced through the air, genuine and unguarded. For the first time in months, Daniel smiled without forcing it. When the children left, he approached. "You read better in person than on a plane," he said gently. Elena looked up, startled, then smiled. "Daniel, I didn't expect to see you here. I didn't expect to be here," he admitted. "But Noah still sleeps to your tune every night. I had to at least tell you that." Her expression softened. "I'm glad he found peace." He hesitated. "I think he's not the only one who did." They talked for an hour that day. About books, about loss, about how sometimes strangers carry pieces of healing we didn't know we needed. She learned that Daniel had buried himself in work after his wife's death, that his mansion felt emptier with every passing day, no matter how many rooms it had. He learned that Elena was a preschool teacher, living modestly, caring for her aging mother, believing kindness was the only legacy worth leaving. When he offered her a ride home, she refused politely. "You don't need to play the billionaire card with me," she said with a small smile. He laughed for real that time. "It's not a card. It's a terrible burden, actually." "Then maybe you should stop carrying it alone," she said quietly before disappearing into the evening light. Days turned into weeks. They started seeing each other often, sometimes by chance, sometimes by Daniel's careful planning. He would bring Noah to the park where Elena volunteered, pretending coincidence, until she saw through him and teased, "Your coincidences are suspiciously punctual." Daniel laughed more these days. He discovered that Elena didn't care about wealth, didn't even seem impressed by his world. She cared about moments, feeding ducks with Noah, helping a neighbor fix a fence, finding joy in small acts of goodness. For the first time since his wife's passing, Daniel began to feel alive again. Not guilty, not trapped in the past, alive. But one evening, as they sat on a bench watching the sunset, he grew quiet. "She'd want me to move on," he said finally, his voice breaking. "But part of me still feels like loving anyone else would erase her." Elena looked at him gently. "You don't erase love by loving again. You honor it by allowing it to grow." Her words settled over him like soft rain. He turned to her, his eyes glistening. "How do you always know what to say?" "I don't," she said, smiling faintly. "I just speak from the part of me that's been broken too." He didn't ask what she meant. He could see it, the quiet sadness she carried, the loneliness that had taught her how to comfort others. Months later, Daniel invited Elena to a charity gala. She hesitated, uncomfortable with glamour, but agreed. When she arrived, wearing a simple blue dress that caught the light like calm water, the room seemed to still. Daniel's colleagues whispered, surprised to see the billionaire with someone so ordinary. But as she spoke, her kindness outshone the diamonds around her. Even the cynics found themselves listening. She talked about the importance of empathy, about how the smallest gesture, a smile, a song, could change someone's life. Daniel watched her, pride swelling in his chest. When she looked at him across the room, their eyes met, and he knew, he wasn't lost anymore. After the event, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, he said quietly, "Do you ever think the universe sends people exactly when we need them most?" Elena smiled. "Maybe it sends reminders. You just have to be listening." Daniel stepped closer. "Then I heard you. That day on the plane. I didn't just hear your voice. I heard hope again." Her eyes glistened. "And I heard your silence, the kind that needed to be seen." They didn't need to say anything more. The night breeze carried everything unspoken between them. Their story unfolded slowly, tenderly. Daniel didn't rush it, afraid to break the fragile peace he had found. Elena didn't expect anything. She was content to just be present, to bring laughter to Noah's days and warmth to Daniel's lonely house. Over time, the mansion filled with sound again, footsteps, giggles, lullabies. Noah adored her, and sometimes Daniel would watch her singing him to sleep, the same song from that flight. Each note reminded him that even grief could find rhythm again. One evening, after putting Noah to bed, Daniel found Elena sitting on the porch, gazing at the stars. He joined her quietly. "Do you ever miss the life you had before?" he asked. She smiled softly. "Sometimes. But if I hadn't lost what I did, I wouldn't have met what I needed." He took her hand. "You changed everything, Elena. My home, my heart, even my nights are quiet again." She squeezed his hand gently. "It wasn't me, Daniel. It was your heart deciding to live again." He looked at her, eyes shining. "Maybe, but you gave it a reason." And there, beneath the same sky his wife used to love, Daniel finally let go, not of memory, but of the pain that had chained it. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "When you sang that day, I thought you were calming my son. I didn't realize you were healing me." Elena smiled through tears. Maybe both needed a lullaby. They sat in silence, stars blinking like distant promises. In that quiet, there was no past or future, just the simple, extraordinary truth that compassion can mend what even time cannot. Years later, people would often talk about Daniel Mercer, the billionaire who found purpose again, who built schools and shelters in his late wife's name, and who credited his transformation to a song sung on an airplane. When reporters asked him about it, he would smile and say, "It wasn't just a song. It was a voice that reached a soul I thought was gone." And sometimes, at charity events, a soft melody would drift through the speakers, the same lullaby, sung by Elena, now his wife, standing beside him. As the world watched, few knew the true story behind that song. But those who looked closely could see it in Daniel's eyes, the peace of a man who had once been lost, and found his way home through love. Because sometimes, all it takes is a single voice to awaken a lonely soul.